Good evening, Wolves fans. Welcome to the latest GTA Fancast. No, I'm not Molineux Musing. That's Gully to the left of me. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight, Wolves Fancast on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Follow us on Instagram as well. We're not live there tonight. You guys are the special ones. We're going to be talking about the win at the weekend over Tottenham, the 1-0 win thanks to the Adama Traore instinctive finish from a tactical perspective. Hopefully, we can give you a bit of insight in how we struggled in the first half and overcame Tottenham in the second half. I'm going to leave it to Gully now to take over, and hopefully, we can have a good conversation. If you've got any comments, just drop them in the comment section below. Drop a like before we start. Over to you, Gully.
Cheers, Dan. It feels like it's been a while since we've been on together, to be honest.
It's pay-per-view tonight. Pay-per-view.
Nice to be with you. So pretty monumental victory almost. It was something maybe we didn't necessarily see coming after a couple of performances in recent weeks, specifically Bournemouth and Liverpool. But it was not quite going all in that direction, you would say, for the first half specifically. And I wanted to just talk about how kind of the formations matched up to begin with. I've got a few screenshots from the game to have a look at, just to highlight as well, guys. The Wolves website does have 90 minutes of all Premier League fixtures available to view after the games. You go on the custom highlights of the website and you can find it on there. Really, really nice little resource to have if you ever do want to go back and enjoy or endure, whichever way you're looking at it. But to begin with, obviously, Spurs are famously always set up in a 3-4-3 with Antonio Conte. It's how he's always played, really. And you can see here, when we're looking to build up possession, we do drop into a back three shape with Mario Lemina dropping in as the centre half, with Kilman and Craig Dawson splitting. But everybody else kind of almost vacates and gets high. And their front three can essentially go man to man, as you can see here. And really, I mean, I don't know what you think, Danny, but there isn't really a pass on anywhere, is there? If you have a look at that graphic from where Max Kilman's got the ball down in the left back spot. I mean, where would you go with that ball if you was trying to find a pass?
It's becoming quite repetitive and it's quite frustrating from a home fan's point of view, isn't it? The fact that you get into that sort of left centre back position there, and inevitably a lot of the time we end up going back to Jose Sarr to reset the passage of play, to try and just obviously get Tottenham a bit further up the field and then try and just get into different pockets in the opposition. It's so frustrating at times. The playing out from the back is key to breaking these better teams who are going to press higher. But sometimes you're just looking for sort of your striker to hold the ball up, or one of your midfielders to come deep and ball carry like Mateus Nunes is capable of, but probably doesn't do it as much as we'd like.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't just the case that we were struggling in kind of safe possession in those kind of positions. When it did come to potential transitions as well, Spurs really pressed us high, and we'll talk about how that back three can support a high press later on when it comes to the way we transitioned to our back three shape. But you look here, we had a situation where we won the ball back. Yes, it was deep in the pitch, but Semedo plays the ball forward to Pablo Sarabia, who's got a man really tight up his back. I think it would have been Ben Davies in that position probably. Yeah. But again, like you say, you've got that extra couple of defenders deep in the pitch to allow you to have that license to go and press really high. And again, there isn't really a pass on to try and get out. What ultimately happens is Sarabia lays it back off to Semedo, and then he loses the ball thereafter because Diego Costa's outnumbered going forward. But even if you think about trying to find other options, everything is covered off. Oliver Skip is available in the middle of the pitch to kind of cut off any passes over towards Johnny and Nunes in the centre of the pitch. Ruben Neves is obviously under a hell of a lot of pressure if he receives the ball from a couple of players as well. And we really, really struggled to kind of build any kind of play. That is kind of highlighted when you look at this this graphic here. This is our passing.
Can I interrupt a second? Because Aditya7 in the comments section has sent in 5 questions, but he's watching at 2:30 in the morning as has got to leave. Aditya7, please try and get on the show tomorrow night when after you've been to work or whatnot. You've already offered some great questions. Johnny versus Ait Nori, Daniel Pones instead of Mateus Cunha. Try and watch the show tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, and good night. God bless you.
Tuning in all the way from India, then, by the sounds of it, if that's the time difference. So yeah, appreciate that, Aditya, and make sure you catch up after the show. This will be available on the YouTube channel as usual. But yeah, you can see this passing network here on the left side is the Wolves one, with the numbers kind of correlating next to each name, how many touches each player had. Diego Costa himself, 3 touches in his 29 minutes on the pitch, I think he had. But straight away, you notice how deep the average positions of each of the players are. Lots of connections between Max Kilman and the central midfielders. That seemed to be the only way we might try and progress the ball, but ultimately we weren't getting anywhere fast. And it didn't also show up in kind of trying to defend as well. And we'll have a look at the way Spurs tended to build up from the back as well. Fraser Forster here played a ball into, I think Romero's actually receiving that, and he's played the ball back into Højbjerg. And interestingly, you've got this ball straight into Oliver Skip, and you can see straight away with the way Neto's trying to anticipate that pass, he's too late. Everything was like a late reaction to actually try and stop Tottenham from building play. And you see here, once Oliver Skip was allowed to turn, he's got the ball into Son, and they're running at our back line. We've got the right wing back just out of shot, ready to receive the ball as well. Harry Kane and Kulusevski are around in that space, and they're running out of back line really far too easily. I mean, I don't know if you felt that was the case for the majority of the first half, Dan, but it was just far too easy for Spurs to play, wasn't it?
Massively. I was really disappointed, but in hindsight, I felt Diego Costas wasn't really being given the support he needed when he was trying to engage the press. It was in regards to sort of like a pulley system between the midfielder and Diego Costa that they weren't going as a unit, and it was just completely just haphazard. And like you said, Tottenham were just picking passes and breaking through our midfield, which allowed Kulusevski, Son, and Kane pretty much 3 against 4 in quite a few occasions. That first half, it was quite concerning.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think we tend to kind of sit in a 4-4-2 when we're out of possession, and that naturally just gives you that extra pass within the back line, especially if they really just want to keep safe possession. It doesn't lead itself to trying to win those balls high up the pitch. And they've got quality. You can't deny that. Some of the players that feature in that forward line, the envy of most of the Premier League at the end of the day, Son, Harry Kane. Although Kulusevski looked really, really good in that spell as well, and especially considering how big he is. You can play up to him with his back to goal. And I think that you turned Johnny the once with ease. And it was looking like we're on for another hiding.
You look at Tottenham, Gully. You look at Tottenham and the fact that they had a big defeat away to Leicester the other week. They've had another big defeat to Wolves on Saturday. Everyone seems to think like Tottenham are having a really bad season, yet they're still 4th, and that's predominantly down to having those attacking players at their disposal. Richarlison can't even get minutes for Tottenham, and that just shows how good the 3 in front of him are. But I felt we contained them pretty well in the first half. Obviously, Pedro Porro had the free kick, which hit the bar. I think Kulusevski had the half chance, which saw tipped around the post. But I felt we contained them from it was pretty much from long distance where they seemed to be troubling us or us making mistakes close to our own area.
I think we were fortunate that they're a bit of a handbrake FC. Very much, a lot of teams that sit in that shape can be a little bit one-dimensional sometimes in attack. I think we were fortunate there wasn't a piece of magic from Kane or Son that opened us up really in that early spell and could have taken us to 1-0.
I think that was purely down to Lamina, though, wasn't it? With keeping Kane from being sort of in an area where he could punish us. He was nipping away at Kane from the first minute, wasn't he? I think Kane became a bit frustrated when he was in control of the ball because he didn't have any time to sort of pick a pass or get a shot away.
He was brilliant, and I think the key point was Diego Costa getting injured. And I mean, it was right in front of me, the conversations that were going on, and Dawson and Lamina in particular were clearly very confused as to what they should have been doing when they were sitting in that back four shape and who should be picking up who. But ultimately, they made that decision to go into the back three, and Lamina was quite simply put on a, like you say, a man-to-man job with Kane. And he really snuffed him out. He was brilliant until the point Harry Kane decided he needs to go to the referee and have a word with him, and started getting a few free kicks then afterwards. But again, just another graphic which really highlights the struggles that we had in building play. That's the touch map of the entire team for the first half. Not a single touch in the penalty area. The obvious stat was as well that we didn't have a single shot in the first half. 0.00 xg as has been highlighted a number of times. And when you think, like you say, Tottenham haven't necessarily been in the best spell of form, it was quite disappointing really to go into this game and have started in that manner. But Lopetegui he's shown he's flexible. He's done the whole back three system change a number of times within games, primarily to kind of see a game out. This point, it was to really kind of keep us in it and give us a platform to build on. And we'll talk a little bit about that change to a back three. It came in the first half, and then it came with substitutions in the second half. Now, you'll notice this is quite a similar graphic to the one I showed early on in the review that we started here today. But you've got your back three shape. What you do notice there, though, straight away is Ruben Neves dropping in between two of the forwards and just giving them something else to think about. He's a passing option for a defender. He's there to draw someone out if a midfielder wants to come and press. But ultimately, there are options now. And the other key person to point out is Pablo Sarabia, who isn't playing on the last line of the defence there, but he's dropped into space on the side of that midfield. Nelson Semedo's keeping the wing back honest. And he just got himself a little bit of space there to say, look, I'm here for a pass and we can build from there. And it creates just a few more questions for Spurs to answer thereafter. Bit of a throwback, really, to the Nuno days almost.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't really been overly positive towards Sarabia. I feel he's a hard worker, but I don't feel he's really been effective when he has been on the ball. I felt that's the reason why sort of Adama did have to come on in that second half, because we just needed a bit more of a different outlet to what Sarabia was offering on that day.
I think he's hampered by a lack of pace ultimately, whilst he has a bit of quality, I think the key bit that he brings is a bit of composure around the penalty area. He showed his goal against Fulham, but I don't think we should necessarily expect him to be too dynamic. We're used to having dynamic forwards, aren't we? Who are going to go and beat people with regularity. But he's just not one of those players.
What's your opinion on certain comments that were made in concourses calling Sarabia and Aldi Jota?
I think that's it's a bit unfair on Jota, to be honest, because he's nothing like him. I mean, I know there's a kind of physical resemblance, isn't there? In terms of that, they actually look quite alike, but you barking up the wrong tree in terms of the type of players that they are ultimately. Sarabia isn't going to go and take apart a defense on his own in the way Jota did on many occasions. Let's be fair, he's a superior player. That's just the bottom line, and that's why he's at Liverpool and Sarabia is at Wolves. But yeah, talking about that back three and how it supported us in build-up specifically as well. We've got a ball here with Craig Dawson in the middle of the back three. I think it was interesting that Collins came on for Lamina, but ultimately I think that was all to do with the fact that Lopetegui didn't want Dawson out on the right-hand side of the back three, because I think Son could have isolated him a little bit and caused him a few problems. Collins is a little bit more mobile. He hasn't played too much football, but again, having a natural centre half in there probably helps as well. And while Lamina probably feels a bit harshly done by to come off, it was the right decision in the end. But Dawson, he's been spoken about as not being that great on the ball, but he actually picks out some nice passes, and this was one that was an example of that. Picks out a kind of incisive pass into Sarabia, who's picked up that position just to the side of that central midfield for Tottenham again, and it just gives us that opportunity to turn and get into the final third again. You'll notice here, big chasm of space has opened up a little bit because the central midfield pairing of Spurs has been stretched a little bit. They've got more runners to contend with, more people dropping into their space. Obviously, you can see here Neves is wide open if needed, but Sarabia carries the ball forward and actually plays the ball into Johnny, who made a forward run. There was an interesting thing that I noticed quite a bit, which was Johnny was coming inside and Nunes was going out wide, which didn't really end up meaning a lot, but it was a tactic that clearly Lopetegui had worked on in training to try and open up space for one way or another. And then you find yourself in this situation when Johnny receives the ball. Nelson Semedo, again, released. He's higher up the pitch because he's got that back three behind him. Adama Traore come on at this point, Raul Jimenez, and then Nunes is making a run wide of Johnny to kind of overlap him. And this is where Johnny plays a nice ball into Jimenez and he flashes the ball across goal, and Semedo's attacking the back post. And straight away, you can just see with the wrong side of the midfield, they're making recovery runs rather than being in a set shape to try and defend that situation. And when you're making recovery runs, you make mistakes, you lose runners, your concentration isn't quite what it would be if you had the whole game in front of you. And that's something that we just weren't doing at all in the first half. And you know, I don't know about you, but it's interesting. People always look at playing with the back three defensively, and I think teams like Tottenham don't do anybody any favours with that kind of mentality because they're not an exciting side. But clearly, it did a lot for us in possession as well in that game.
I mean, Aditya 7 did raise the question, Johnny versus Eight Nori. Based on your comment there, that sort of Johnny became a bit more central and Nunes went wide. Ryan Eight Nori isn't the type of player that would naturally come inside.
No, I see. I'm thinking about it, and no, you're right. But then there was that game against Liverpool in the cup where he played as a left winger, didn't he? And I felt, because I've spoken about this before, Lopetegui's teams like to play narrow in midfield. You know, we've tended to play with Nunes as a left-sided midfielder and Sarabia on the right. Naturally, they're going to kind of tuck in a little bit because of their tendencies to do that. And Eight Nori showed, because he's really good with the ball at his feet. You know, he can get himself out of tight situations. So I think there's scope for it. But ultimately, he's a very left-footed player. So the tendency for him to go out on the outside and beat a man on and then put a cross in is always going to be the case. Johnny, I think, suffers a little bit for having lost a yard of pace since his injury as well. So the likelihood of him actually going on the outside of a man and beating them is so much more slim now. He used to do it and put crosses in and things like that, but he's just not capable of it anymore.
Obviously, coming in narrow suits Johnny being right-footed on the left as well, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does. But it's even more prevalent now just because I don't think he's got the pace to go out on the outside of anyone anymore. And I think he's probably slightly underrated with the ball at his feet as well. I think he can be tidy in possession. Played a nice pass, like I said, for that Semedo chance when Jimenez flashed it across the goal. But the other thing that the back three does for us is it gives us license to really kind of get tight to our men. And in that first half, we weren't able to do it. Players like Son were dropping into space, Kane was dropping into space and picking up the ball and turning at us. Now you can see here, Collins has drawn to Son, who's dropped in to get possession of the ball. But he's gone really tight with him. And yet we still got a back four in situ to kind of deal with any of the other players that might cause us a threat in behind. So, you know, again, not a negative tactic. It's something that can be a positive for us. And that triggered a pressing situation, which led us into, you know, winning the ball quite high up the pitch. We didn't win it in this situation exactly, but you got four men around the ball there, forcing Tottenham backwards. They end up in this situation here with Longley facing his own goal. He's got an option to go back to his keeper, but then even then we've got Jimenez running forwards. He actually tries to be clever, I think, because he thinks that there isn't necessarily the backup from our press going, kind of coming from behind Jimenez, and I think it was Neves there actually pressing Longley in that position. And then you see in this final situation, he tries to play the ball inside, but Moutinho reads it, wins the ball, and then we end up getting a chance within the penalty area, and that was when Cunha hit the side netting. So game read properly again. It's really interesting to see how Lopetegui handled coming up against what was a difficult situation to be in that first half. You didn't really see us getting any kind of result out of that game at that point, did you?
No, I think you look at the Liverpool 3-0 and Saturday and periods of the defeat away to Liverpool. I think João Moutinho is massive in leading the press. Like I said, he's got that nous, that sort of instinct to read where a passage of play is going. Like you mentioned with that chance that we had there, that was all due to João Moutinho reading the way the game was going. I feel like Nunes needs to add that to his game, that sort of nous intercepting higher up the pitch. I think Moutinho is massive. It can't do it over 90 minutes, but games where we're going to have less possession than what we normally expect is key to getting us up the field. Moutinho is.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually played as the most advanced midfielder on a number of occasions for Lopetegui as well.
On paper, in the number 10 role that you'd put sort of template him out at the start of kickoff, isn't what the fans really want to see. They're not reading him as number 10, but like I said, his nous to pick up passes and intercept higher up the pitch is key for us at the moment.
Yeah, I weirdly, and I can't believe I'm making this comparison, to be honest, because you know what my thoughts are on players like this, but I remember a spell under Kenny Jackett when Dave Edwards used to play as a number 10 a lot. And essentially, I think his role was he'd come off after about an hour, like every single week, but he would just run himself into the ground to make sure that Kevin McDonald and Jack Price didn't have to. And they were sat behind him and they just control the game. And, even it might have been, I know you probably got the likes of Afobe and Dicko in there somewhere as well, but he would absolutely run himself into the ground, making sure that, a lot of the off the ball unseen work that needs to happen, cutting off passing lanes, stopping people from progressing the ball, all that sort of stuff. And Moutinho has been doing that for Wolves in that role, which is, again, you wouldn't expect it to be the case, but that's why he's in there. I do think we have a problem in possession when he plays as that midfielder, and we get into situations around the penalty area, and he's not really the guy you want trying to create chances for you. But clearly, he values his intelligence in that role.
That's why I say that he's been massively key for us in certain games where the Liverpool win at home. The win against Tottenham on Saturday, against teams where we're getting less possession, especially in the higher areas of the pitch, he's key. But then you put him in that number 10 role against Bournemouth where we're looking to break a team down. It just didn't work. I think Lopetegui's got to be a bit cuter with his starting lineups against teams where we should theoretically dominate with possession.
Yeah, and I think he's learned that because was it the Fulham game that came after Bournemouth, was that?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, so the Fulham game, he then went with Jimenez and Cunha, didn't he?
Yeah.
To start with. And we saw how well we played in possession, in particular in that game, that first half. We should have created more chances than we did. But I think he got it right with that team selection. Unfortunately, obviously Cunha went off injured in that game and then we missed him for the start of these two games. But ultimately, all of that meant a hell of a lot of improvement in the second half. That's the entire team's touch map again, which is massively in contrast to the first half touch map that we showed. This is all from whoscored.com, by the way. You can go and have a look at their stats and graphics, which are really, really useful as an indicator of some of the things you might see and can qualify some opinions if you need them to. I know a lot of people like to have arguments in various social media outlets, but you can go to these resources and really prove your point. Again, all the shots coming in that second half as well. The other highlight I wanted to make was Johnny and Semedo. Again, first half really deep within the pitch, not getting advanced at all in the 4-4-2, would you call it 4-2-3-1 shape that we started with. But then second half again, straight away, more advanced, more involved, and making things happen. Semedo even nearly getting an assist there for Raul's goal that was offside. But there you have it. I mean, like you said, I think we still have an issue from kickoff at games, and Lopetegui trying to get the right formula, but you can't really argue with his ability to read a fixture and fix what problems we have within it, can you?
No, it's still learning how the Premier League's played out. I think not having a consistent starting 11 to work from. Obviously, I think Lamina got suspended for the one game. Obviously, Cunha has been in and out with injury. Daniel Podence is still your top goal scorer, goal contribution. He ain't able to fit him into the team at the moment. You did ask the other question earlier. What's your thoughts on Daniel Podence playing in Cunha's position?
I think again a lot of it comes down to what the player is doing out of possession. You read certain things into lineups, and I remember even from was it Everton game would have been his first league game. Lopetegui, he started Hwang on the right wing. Podence played on the left hand side in that game, and did well from what I recall. But Moutinho was the one that was playing alongside Costa almost in that advanced midfield role. So, I mean, Podence again wasn't available for selection at the weekend. He suggested it was a tactical decision to include an extra defender, which is interesting. But
also a fair comment, really. You had Adama, Raul, and Cunha on the bench. I don't think this needs to be made as big as it seems. The opponents may have become disgruntled at his lack of minutes, but you look to that bench and the depth that we've got at the moment. Obviously, João Gomez would have been on the bench, a goalkeeper, and then your defenders. There wasn't really a space for him in my eyes, due to the fact that Neto was being given minutes from the start, which he probably needed to be given just to see how he could react. He looked tired to me in the first 30 minutes. Neto did. So obviously, he'll get better the more minutes he gets.
It was a horrible game to come back into for someone who hasn't played, was it? Just totally. He was just chasing Pedro Porro for half of it. So yeah, hopefully it's just miles on the clock for him now. So that'll hopefully stand him in good stead. Going back to the Podence point though, it'll be interesting. Obviously, the likelihood is that Costa's going to be out for a while now. If we ever see him again, that is. But with Hwang coming back from injury, I'll be interested to know who essentially takes that spot on the bench now, because we know Lopetegui likes Hwang, his work rate and his ability to get in behind defences. Podence, maybe his face just doesn't fit with Lopetegui at the moment, despite what he's produced. And he has got some important points this season at the end of the day, so you can't really argue with that.
Yeah, I did have this conversation with a guy at work today about Podence. I think that the fact he has been one of those players who tries to be expansive, but I think, like I've sort of commented on Sarabia before, I think Lopetegui wants sort of workhorses before those types of players at the moment. I think that's why he was fond of Hwang in his earlier games.
Yeah, no, and I think it all ties into the fact that we weren't at the fitness levels that he wanted us to be when he first joined the club. He uses 5 subs in every single game that he's managed so far. He's absolutely rinsing that rule, which I think by the time we used all 5 of our subs on Saturday, Tottenham had to make 1, had they? And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that we were a bit fresher going into the latter stages of that game. And, that pressing situation that I spoke about, there was just some extra legs in there for us to actually go after them. And then, you've got the bit between your teeth and the crowd are up, and little psychological things like that can make a real difference in the game. And ultimately, it led to us getting a goal and winning the game. So, very quickly, Dan, how do you think we'll go against Newcastle? Do you think it's a game we can go and attack?
You look at the sort of stat that came out yesterday. I think Newcastle have won one in the last 7 or 1 in the last 8. I believe that Newcastle have started to become leggy now. I feel like they're similar to Wolves in the first 2 seasons after we got promoted, that they've got a strong first 11, but their depth is really lacking after that. And I feel like they've been sort of, I don't want to say overachieving, but that they have exceeded all expectations this season. Eddie Howe's done an outstanding job since he came in last season. I feel like the momentum of the ownership change and having the fans back on side has has drove them on a lot, and I feel like that's starting to peter out now. And the players that who have sort of exceeded expectations are starting to probably level out to their normal levels now. Obviously, Almiron was. I don't know how to describe Almiron on the start of the season. He was on fire, wasn't he? I feel like the goals have dried up recently. I feel like Newcastle are there to be got out. We'll discuss that a bit more on Friday's preview show.
Yeah, well, as we all know, it's going to be 1-1 because it's always 1-1 between Wolves and Newcastle. But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Appreciate your time. First time we've gone live with GTA. This will obviously be available to view. Come back and view on the YouTube channel. Got a whole playlist of content related to tactical analyses of games in the past as well. Well over 50 videos now that we've got that look into past results going back a couple of seasons. So feel free to have a gander through them if you are incredibly bored. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up after next week's game against Newcastle.